Welcome to today's Research Business Daily Report, where we're going to get the scoop from Microsoft Research about polling's ills from probabilistic sampling and some potential cures that it has to offer. We're sponsored today and this week by Nuance, offering multi-language verbatim coding services that help its clients quantify the meaning of open-ended answers. Nuance, a decision analyst company. On the average day, I feel compelled to lay out something important about a guest that we have here on RBDR, and I'm accustomed to having to explain why we've invited that guest. But today, I think all that needs to be said is that our guest is with Microsoft Research. That should mean something to all of you. And he works with a relatively small but highly distinguished group that does not regularly seek out, but it does also not receive a great deal of attention. The group made news late last year when it went public with its non-probabilistic polling philosophies and also testing using Xbox. The name of our guest is David Rothschild, who I think for the research innovator out there will strike you as an industry leader. David, you guys through Microsoft have rolled out a new way of looking at polling and such. In brief, what's the idea behind it?
The idea behind this is to really understand all sorts of facets with non-representative samples and how to both understand sentiment today and predict things in the future. It includes exploring not just non-representative polling, panels, modeling and post-stratifying that data, but also prediction games where we get extremely self-selected groups of people with high information who play games that predict the future. It's understanding how all of this comes together, how all of this works when you use multiple modes, when you have different people answering different types of questions, aiming towards the same answer. And so it's really, it's both an engagement platform and a way for a vehicle for us to demonstrate the kind of data collection and data analytics that we're doing here, as well as really a research platform where we continually innovate on how people provide information, thinking about who the people are, the exact questions we're asking them, the incentive structures that they're provided, and finally the aggregation methods that we utilize to take all of this disparate data and bring it all together to understand what's going on now and what will happen in the future.
In brief, what do you see as the greatest problems that traditional polling has?
Traditional polling is racked by both coverage and selection errors, which they don't really understand and are getting worse. And so we do not have baselines about the world at all points and all times. But what we can tell is that falling response rates and falling ability to reach the entire audience is leading to data which should be more and more expensive and concerning at the same time. And this is coupled with the fact that traditional polling is built on just cross-sectional analysis. You only see people once when you're random and representative. And so this leaves a gigantic opening for what non-representative, non-traditional polling can do if you move into a world in which you can have panels. You move into a world in which it is less costly to reach people and moves into a world in which once you've collected that data, you're allowed to run the statistical analysis that we have so much power to do in order to make it more accurate at a much lower cost.
Okay. Now, the Microsoft Predictions Lab became a public situation, 2-3 months ago. Where has it moved since that time? Because I know you've been trying to entice people to become part of the operation, to be providing opinions on a regular basis.
So we continue to have polling that's generally up, but we've also been revamping for new prediction games and for new domains, which we hope to launch in the near future in the next few months. We want to be a place in which we are continuously up and running with games, which we're continuously exploring new domains, which we're continuously exploring new questions. And so we launched during the 2014 election to take advantage of the questions which we had at hand, but we look forward to really iterating a lot this spring and early summer.
Okay. Is it fair to say that what you're doing is tantamount to what the Iowa Presidential Predictive Marketplace does every 4 years when the presidential election is held, where they basically place their actual money bets on who's going to win?
I'm an economist. My training is actually in understanding market design and prediction markets in general. So the IO prediction market, Intrade and Betfair, which are foreign exchanges, Predict It, which just launched with the CFTC's approval, all look to say canonically, we have a contract. It's going to be worth $1 if candidate A wins. It's $0 if candidate A loses. That is the basis of a lot of the games that we're playing. It's understanding that methodology that allows us to turn into number one, prediction games, which we've learned a lot from polling. We've tried to simplify the interfaces. We've asked direct questions to people. But number two, we've used what we've learned in prediction games and prediction markets to help explain polling better. How do we use self-selected people like markets in a polling setting? How do we ask questions like who is going to win or what's the probability of victory in a polling setting? How do we incentivize people to answer questions truthfully? And how do we aggregate questions rather than taking simple averages or using raking and other simple weighting techniques to actually use more complex modeling and post-stratification such as that markets use? And so it's combining the two. It's learning from polls to help us make better markets. It's learning from markets to help us make better polls. And we're really stoked to be at the intersection of the two.
Are you finding any interest from traditional pollsters about what you're doing?
We've definitely seen, just in the few years that I've been doing this type of research, a dramatic shift in the acceptance of traditional pollsters to investigate and understand non-traditional polling and other forms of forecasting. I think that in the beginning, it was seen as quite an oddity. I went to APOR starting in my second or third year at grad school. I talked about expectation pollings. It was a sideshow. People thought it was fun, interesting, but no one was really doing it. 5 or 6 years later, everyone's asking these expectation polling questions. They're reporting them in their standard polling, along with the standard polling. We're seeing more and more online polling be accepted in whether or not it's pollsters running averages or the New York Times. We're seeing a dramatic shift in how people look at it. There's still a very weird, to me, binary cutoff between probabilistic polling and non-probabilistic polling and utilizing simple weighting statistics and utilizing more complex statistics. To me, the whole world's a continuum. When you move from extremely probabilistic polling to extremely non-probabilistic polling, and it's understanding how that continuum shifts the value of your data is what we're trying to explore.
You are a proponent of the idea that a change such as what you guys are testing is going to be a necessity probably within a decade. Explain why.
I think there's two main reasons to be doing this research. And the first is right now is going to help supplement what we know. If you can get information about the world that's meaningful, even if it's not as accurate, but it's pretty accurate, it has some meaning to it, and you can do it at a fraction of the cost, you can do it faster, you can be more flexible with the questions you ask, that's going to be useful now. That's going to supplement the world we have and help us answer new questions in new domains. The worry, the second part is what you just mentioned down the line, which is a world in which we've moved from landlines to a mixture of landlines and cell phones. What happens when landlines completely disappear? What happens when more and more people are not available on either landlines or cell phones, when they rely simply on internet-based communication or usernames or other methodologies I'm not even thinking about right now? The number of mixed modes that you will have to engage in order to cover the general population, the relevant population, is just going to grow and just going to make it so that probabilistic polling with low coverage errors, it's just going to be a thing of the past. It's all going to be non-probability. We need to be prepared for that moment.
Okay. One of your phrases that catches my eye is asking the right people the right questions the right way. Is that equivalent to online research now where we tell people you can get it better, faster, or cheaper? Take 2 out of the 3.
I think that the idea of asking the right question to the right person at the right time is supplement to your motto, in the sense that what we're saying is let's be flexible, add flexibility now, allow you to understand how going towards the same sentiment or the same forecast, you don't need to be in a world in which you control the whole environment. You need to accept that people are going to provide information in different ways. And adding that flexibility is what's going to give you speed, it's going to give you scalability. And in exchange, we're working on how that's going to affect your accuracy. But we know that we can nail that down, and we're going to keep on learning from that. And that's what's going to say, hey, you can get the same kind of answers that you need, or maybe even new and different answers that you need at a fraction of the cost, at a much faster pace, with much more flexibility. And then keeping that question of accuracy as saying, what do you need and how far can you reach it? And it's always a matter of pulling those levers, as you said. Maybe you pull back some of the flexibility, and that's going to give you a little more accuracy, but it's understanding that, quantifying that, codifying that is where we're headed.
Internet research, and this is my last question, scared the dickens out of traditional researchers. Why shouldn't traditional pollsters be scared of what you're proposing?
We're moving away from a static world, a world in which polling and market intelligence in general has moved rather gradually and slowly over the last few decades, to be frank. And it is scary moving away from it. But a true researcher, an innovator, somebody who thinks of themselves as a scientist, someone who's going to learn, should be excited about entering a world in which, A, there's going to be a lot of innovation and a lot of movement in the next few years and decades. But more than that, we are never going to experience a time of stability like we had before. And that's actually going to make true researchers have a great position, because as people are constantly changing the way that they engage with each other, constantly changing the way that they engage with businesses, there will be a constant need for people to understand how today's movement is different from yesterday's movement, how tomorrow's movement is going to be different from the day after that. And so researchers, practitioners should always be in business, because it's going to be a constantly changing environment. This is the best thing that ever happened to them. And if you don't embrace it, it's going to be the worst thing that ever happened to them. If you embrace it, though, there's going to be a lot of movement and a lot of excitement. So it's going to be both fun and meaningful. It's going to be a way in which you can constantly stay involved.
That's your Research Business Daily Report, sponsored by Nuance, offering multi-language verbatim coding services to help companies quantify the meaning of open-ended answers. Nuance, a decision analyst company, has set up a link so that you can find out more about its product and service. The link is www.nuancecoding.com. And I can tell you from experience over the last year that a lot of people have clicked on it and wanted to learn more. Maybe you should too. Have a great research day. We'll see you tomorrow with a very special edition of RBDR. Take care.